people have been asking us to talk about the Retro VGS all summer. And we had opinions about it all summer.
Yep.
However, we wanted to try to be fair and objective, believe it or not, and wait until we saw what was actually going to be offered via what we thought was going to be a Kickstarter at the time.
Which, yeah,
the crowdfunding campaign. So I've known the guy running this, Mike Kennedy, for 5 years off and on. We met at the Tetris World Championship that I hosted in 2010 while he had chased a chuck wagon or just gotten Game Gavel, I forget if he made that purchase or not. And I saw him at a couple of video game meetups outside of LA. I've written for the Retro magazine. I don't write for it anymore. I decided not to anymore, but I've written for 4 issues of that. So, no Mike Kennedy. I just spoke with Mike Kennedy at Game On Expo about the Retro VGS for like 15 minutes, and I'll get into more of the details later. So they launched their Kickstarter, and it went south fairly quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the backlash was almost immediate.
So there's a lot of things we can discuss here, but let's start with, I guess, the campaign itself and what the Retro VGS is.
So the Retro VGS launched, and the Kickstarter is looking for close to $2 million.
The Indiegogo. Just
the Indiegogo.
And there's a distinct difference, and we'll get to that why.
There's a reason why we need to make that clear. The Indiegogo.
Indiegogo is also a crowdfunding platform, if you didn't know.
The Retro VGS bills itself as a return to the roots of retro gaming. There is a heavy emphasis on the usage of cartridges, and cartridges being a superior media because they allow for instant play, and cartridges do not require updates.
And you can put them on, instantly play them.
Right. The system is made using a machine tooling for Atari Jaguar cases that was acquired, and the cartridges would come in Atari Jaguar cartridge cases as well. The system was initially built to play games developed specifically for the Retro VGS using its own internal architecture, and B, to play your retro games from various systems using a field programmable gate array, which is essentially a circuit board that reconfigures itself on the fly based on its needs to handle various situations. So, if a Nintendo cartridge was in there, it would play the Nintendo cartridge.
If you had an adapter.
It would require a separate adapter. If you used a separate adapter and put a Neo Geo cartridge in there, it could also play that by reconfiguring.
It could figure out what it was and say, all right,
basically,
this is a Super Nintendo game.
Yes.
We have the coding inside for this. Let's do it.
Do this on the fly, and we got it. So that was what that's what it is billed as, and it's ostensibly, and I'll get into this more later, it is ostensibly sold towards retro game aficionados who want something new that is old.
Okay, real quick though, that FPGA part of it, which is the field programmable gate array, one of the reasons why that was people like the idea is because then you could then develop for that a lot easier using the system too.
Sure.
So you can develop a ColecoVision game using, I guess, a dev kit with this, or a Nintendo game even that was sort of part of the appeal.
It was supposed to make development a whole lot easier, in addition to being a nice cherry on top of a sundae in terms of letting you play your old stuff. The system was originally slated to be about 150. Then they said about 180. Then they said maybe 200. Problematically, the Indiegogo has the lowest system price at $299, which I think is the first problem that a lot of people had, among many.
Plus shipping.
I'm going to get there. Plus shipping, which is $40 within the continental U.S. and $70 for outside of the U.S. I have to state that is a lot for shipping. A well-padded and packed priority flat rate box that will get you an item in 2 days is about $20. There are also a number of tiers for people who would like to purchase, pay more. You can get a personalized system. You can get a system in a bronze color. You can get a system in a silver color. You can get a system in a gold color. You can essentially bid on getting the first serial number.
And these are a lot more. These are
much more.
$424 for the silver, $450 for the gold, $500 for the elite one, which is the serial number that you basically bid on to get the higher one.
So you're talking $150 more for a color that is limited. Here's one issue that I have with the system. It's billed as a system for retro game enthusiasts. Yet the price point and everything that has been announced so far, I feel like it preys on a retro game enthusiast. This is not for someone who enjoys playing retro games. This is for a collector, and it is for a collector only. Why? Because the Indiegogo fails to state what the processor is going to be, what any of the specs are going to be. It has no working prototype as of right now, which is why they used Indiegogo. Kickstarter requires a working prototype for hardware. So what they are selling you is a dream, yet they are more concerned with you bidding on a high serial number and getting a fancy color console than they are actually showing you what the thing can do. Now let's back up. The thing that they show on the page, the sizzle reel for the games, that is games being played on a PC. Largely, or a system where these games have already come out on. Why? Yeah. Because of what I just said. The games for this system are almost exclusively not exclusive. I mean, these are games that were indie titles released on Steam or Dreamcast. And there's more problems with that I'll get into later. But right there is your first issue. Why is someone going to pay what I feel is an exorbitant amount of money, and then an exorbitant amount of money for the cartridges? A lot of these are between $30 and $60 for a game that you can play on your PC hooked up to your TV for $10.
Yeah. To tie us back to our conversation we had last time about cartridges, about why could they ever come back? One of the reasons why we said they couldn't, besides the price, is that it's just an outdated way of making games.
Yes.
One of the selling points of this system is that you're going to get a game in a cartridge bug-free. I'm not sure who or what could guarantee that any game would ever be bug-free. When you look back at the NES library of games, there's glitches in those games. They are not bug-free. Even the higher-end games, even a game like Super Mario Brothers, has glitches in it.
You know why someone can beat DuckTales in 7.5 minutes? Because you can glitch the entire moon level.
And those games, these games here, had full QA teams on them.
You have to remember, these had... Yeah, exactly. These were large development studios working on these.
So Legend of Zelda had a team pouring through that game to make sure there weren't any game-breaking bugs in it. When you're talking these modern indie-style retro games being made, these are not large teams by and far. Some of these are a couple people. Some of these are one person. A game like Battle Kid was one of the first NES homebrews to gain popularity. It was done by Civac. One person. So what this means is that they don't have necessarily all the time the means, the resources, and the money to do full QA before a game gets put out there. So when that happens, they may not catch something. So when you have the game, if people start saying, oh, there's a bug here. Oh, this sort of weird scenario that you may not play through the game 10 times to see, this might break the game. Oh, I can now make a change to that game, release a patch to you. So you get the patch, it's fixed within a week, maybe less, you're good to go.
Now
By by lauding the fact that these games can't be updated, that is not a positive.
No, that's negative.
Because what happens when the packing game has a bug in it, or one of the first launch games has a bug in it, and the players get it and they're disappointed, they're fucked. They're not going to send the games back to take them apart, reburn the ROM after they do. You're screwed. Or conversely, what would happen then is if a company wants to make sure the game is bug free, you ain't getting this game for a long, long time. It's going to come out on Steam and PC first. It's going to be a lot cheaper than the $30 to $60 cartridge that this is going to be. It'll be a $10 or $15 game. And you know what? You're going to get the game in February instead of getting it in October.
And it will be updated as things are noted. Now, look, we all hate this update, this release of broken game culture, but I think this really comes with AAA games. Now, one of the things they stated was, now Pat's absolutely right. He stated that these indie teams are small, sometimes one person, sometimes a team of 3 to 5. Now, they may not have money for Q&A or time for Q&A, so they do the best they can. Well, the Retro VGS team has stated when asked about this that, well, no, we're going to have rigorous standards in place to make sure that the games are bug-free. Well, guess what? The Retro VGS team is 3 people. Yeah. So we have a total of 10 people bug testing an indie game. There's no way you can do this. As Pat had stated before, and as I've stated, these games that came out on cartridges, you have to be looking through extremely foggy, rose-tinted glasses to think that these games were perfect in any way, shape, or form. There's a reason why people can speedrun The Legend of Zelda on Super Nintendo in like 10 minutes. Because there are bugs that you can use to break the game. And that is always going to exist. The other point I want to make, and Pat makes a good one about how it would take a long time for these games to finally hit the market if they're going to put rigorous standards in place, right? But here's my other thing. Games aren't developed this way anymore. If you wanted something like this to happen, even admitting that an occasional bug would come through, you would need a dedicated team of developers creating only games for the Retro VGS who are willing to sign off when a game is done, nothing else is going to happen to it, and if they want to do more, there will be a sequel or something else. However, that's not the case. Why? No one is going to write a game only for the Retro VGS. There's no money in it, and that's a lot of labor. If these people decide that, because it happens, if an indie game developer releases a game and it does really, really well, okay, and they decide they want to thank the fans and they update with a little bit of additional content or something like that, well, guess what? Your really awesome, unupdatable, no patches necessary cartridge isn't going to fucking get that shit. And then you're going to get people who wondered why they spent $60 on a game that can't get the bonus content that was released after the small-time indie dev said, thanks, here guys, I did this for you. Even if it's charged, but sometimes it's not charged, these people aren't going to get the thank you. They're going to end up with a portion of a game on a, and they specifically go through and tell you what every color of the cartridge is going to be because it's collector-minded, not player or gamer-minded. You're going to have X game on a translucent red cartridge on your shelf when the person who just bought it on Steam is going to have a much fuller game, and it's just not on cartridge.
The cartridges cost money. We talked about why.
Yes. These
are going to be like opening up a Nintendo game. These aren't going to be like a little flash thing in it. You know, there's the Retro VGS team are going to be producing these cards. This is going to be the NES model where the game publisher sends their game to get produced, and then they take a cut of the cost,
right,
and then sell them. That's how this would work. You know, I forget exactly what Mike told me at a Game on Expo about the cut they're taking, but it's at least I think around $10 they would take. So, like the NES, the exact same thing. They will control the selling of it and get a cut of each cartridge, and that's how they'll probably make their money in the long term. Because since I don't think Retro VGS would have their own first party games or something like this. Let's talk about the controller ports and the controller.
Oh, geez.
So what's going to be featured here, in theory, on the Retro VGS, by the way, which was going to have HDMI output and have S-video and have also composite. It was going to have maybe one other one. I think maybe RGB compatibility or something. That's not important to me right now. What's important to me, though, is controller ports. This is why. So they're going to feature 2 USBs, 2 9-pins, which you would see on an Atari or Genesis, which to me is cool because that means you could plug a Genesis controller in theory and play a game, and it's really cheap to throw those on there, apparently, since everyone's doing it. But the USB could be cool because you can get adapters for USB to use whatever you want. But the Retro VGS packing controller, let's talk about that real quick. The Retro VGS packing controller is a third-party Wii
U Pro controller.
Wii U Pro controller
with poor reviews
that you can buy right now on, I think, Amazon or whatever for like $12 or whatever it is.
Yes.
It's you know, you have the analogs, you have
4 face buttons and
triggers,
I think 4 triggers.
You know, it's what you would expect from any controller at this point. So it's not getting good reviews. And I guess they're going to include that there. I don't have a lot to say about that, except that if you're going to get an off the market controller, why even bother at that point to include it? If it's one that's not well reviewed, if it's one that isn't unique, I'm not saying come up with your own controller. What I'm saying though is if you're going to go and source a third-party controller, get one that's good.
If you've got 2 USB ports and 2 9-pin ports, ship it out without a controller. I mean,
yeah.
I hate to say it, but you can assume that someone who's buying this has got a Genesis controller or a USB controller laying around that they can use instead of you pretending like you have a proprietary controller that you're selling for like $25.
Yeah, it's weird because if they're buying these in bulk, they're getting a sweet deal on these. If these are retailing for $12, even if they're getting one specially done, they ain't paying more than $5 each for these controllers in bulk.
Believe me, I know controller pricing. They're not.
So
Not for that stuff.
To call it a prototype in any way is sort of...
No, it's 100% disingenuous. It's not a prototype. It's an off-the-shelf controller that you silkscreen something onto.